Tamar, and I was born in Mexico, and that's what makes me Latina, basically.
My name is Graciela. I was born in the Dominican Republic, and yeah.
I'm Camila, and I'm half Puerto Rican. That's what makes me Latina.
So I identify as Dominican because of Dominican culture, and to me, that looks like food, music, language, like the way people interact with each other, customs, like moral beliefs. Like I grew up around a lot of people that identified as like Hispanic and Latino, so feeling comfortable in a space and like feeling like I belong to that community, like and feeling accepted with that community made me like that's what told me that I belong to that community, and so that's why I identify as Dominican. That's the term that I chose to use, and how I define my culture and myself.
I think for me, my experience of being a Latina has been characterized by a feeling of non-belonging on both my Puerto Rican side and my Irish side. And so it's also like a balancing act of like acknowledging all of the privileges I have as someone who has white skin and lives that, and gets to reap the benefits of that, but also has been othered culturally and underrepresented culturally in media and like where I grew up in a very white, wealthy town. My mom was a Spanish teacher at this all-girls private school when I moved from Chicago, and so I started school at this very white place, and since I looked white and since no one else spoke Spanish at the preschool that I started going to, it was really easy for me to abandon all markers of being Puerto Rican, of being Latina.
I've definitely had some kind of identity struggle in my life because I was born in Mexico. I grew up there. I lived there until I was 5. But I was born into a very like predominantly white, affluent demographic in Mexico City. And the other thing is also that I'm Jewish, and I grew up in mostly like a Jewish community in Mexico. And another thing is that my mom's Moroccan, so there's just like this mixture of things. And then on top of it, I'm white passing, I'm assuming. I like at this point, I really do feel like I've reaped the privileges of like passing as white, other than people telling me that I don't look Mexican and that like they get confused when I tell them that I'm also Jewish, or like if I tell them one thing first, like the other thing just like cannot coexist with it. So they just like get so baffled. That was like a huge part of growing up here in LA, in the US.
Yeah, I think like I say this often, like people forget that like intersectionality is a thing. There's like a discrepancy between like what you can physically see and like hold and what's tangible, and like what exists within like the sphere of like I guess like your soul and like who you are as a person, because like I can be Dominican and also be like US American, and it's like I don't have to have a parent that was born in one country and a parent that was born in another to be those two things, you know. And like I can identify with different cultures. I don't have to just have one culture, and like because of the age that we're in terms of like our age group, our generation, and also like this age in history, I think people are discovering that like you are allowed to have multiple identities, but like that's something that I feel like people are just now becoming comfortable with.
I get questions like you don't look like why do you speak Spanish? Why do you look so white? You don't look Puerto Rican. Like your mom speaks Spanish. Why don't you speak Spanish? And it's almost like they're disappointed in you, you know, and like you're a failure. You could feel like a failure for not being as Hispanic as like. So yeah, I think mainly I feel disconnected from my culture like through other people, and like it's really hard to stop looking at yourself through other people, because also there's this dimension of like I feel sometimes that my presence and my whiteness and that my whiteness coinciding with my being Latina is offensive, like just by nature, and it could offend somebody, like, and I feel like, you know, like me entering like a predominantly like Latina space, like what does that look like how does my appearance make other people feel, you know, and like I just don't, and since a lot of my life has been repression of that, I don't have like and also when you're white passing, it's like you can't recognize other white passing people because you look white. So you can't even like make connections with other people,
and that's
because you can't see each other. You're just invisible.
And then also like when you tell someone about like where you're from or like what identities you're part of, they start assuming things about you. Like when I tell people I'm Latina, they're like you have an accent and like I don't know, you do Dia de los Muertos, and I'm just like, no, actually I'm Jewish, so I don't take part in like the Catholic indigenous traditions of Mexico, unfortunately, because they're like beautiful, but that's not what I grew up with. But it's assumptions like that, because it's just been like so homogenized. I don't really know what my roots are, like other than Judaism, which is like the most like solid like demographic I can identify with. The thing, like when I'm by myself, when I'm not with my family, when I'm not in Mexico, and when I'm not like being Jewish, I just feel like I'm just a person and I don't have to identify with anything. And that's kind of like the thing I've decided to do like at a very young age, because like I just don't think it's worth it for me to have to like explain to every single person I meet like where I come from, especially if I'm not so deeply connected and like actually like practicing that culture as much as like people who actually do practice that culture.
And I think that sometimes like depending on where I personally am, I feel disconnected from my roots in different ways. So like when I'm in school, I can't speak Spanish because like most people don't speak Spanish here, and even if they did, it's not about me speaking the language for me, because like I identify with my culture, and it's about like speaking Spanish and having the feeling of you understand me through this kind of language interaction. And like sometimes I'm in other places where I am speaking Spanish, but like there's lack of music or whatever, and that's how I feel disconnected. But there's always something that like connects you to it, because like you bring it to the spaces that you occupy, because it's like in you.
Yeah, so I think that reconnecting with the language is a really big part of like decolonizing myself, and like reclaiming my identity, because it's just sad. It just makes me so sad. Like it's something I had that I lost. It's like a compromise I made, and I think that like it's really important to give myself the space to reclaim that. But I think that the language is really important to me. So I also listen to Spanish music or podcasts. My mom sends me articles in Spanish sometimes. She's a Spanish teacher also, and we talk on the phone every week in Spanish, and I call my abuelos in Puerto Rico every week, and we talk in Spanish as much as I can. And it's really vulnerable to do that with people that aren't my family, and even my family, just because it's you don't want to fuck up, you know. It's like, and it's just a lot of pressure, and it's like, but I think I've gained a lot of strength throughout my life through those compromises that I've had to make. And that strength is what's letting me go back. Also, I decided that I'm going to use my time here to study Puerto Rico and study where I come from, instead of I thought I was going to be an art teacher or something, you know. But I just need to, I just can't stop. I have to. I don't really have a choice. I feel like this time that I've been given is really important at this place where you can do that. You can study yourself, or you can make a really personalized, unique expression, and I'm using that time to reclaim this identity. And I think that studies, I'm just teaching myself. No one's going to teach me. I have to do the work. As much as it was a struggle to compromise myself and make these sacrifices, I did those things, and I also need to take responsibility. And that responsibility, what that looks like to me, is just reteaching myself and doing the really hard, heavy work that I have to do to be a whole person. So yeah.
I think at first I started doing it by trying to reconnect myself with the language through music, and I play guitar and I sing, so and also the music that I mostly got into was from Peru, and I started singing songs by Violeta Parra, and yeah, and she, because they're just it's such powerful music, and I just wanted to, and the poetry is just amazing. Poetry in Spanish is beautiful. And I also I tried to start reading books in Spanish, but I just haven't had the time. But that's something I'm gonna pursue. And also, I've been trying to educate myself on the histories of my identities. So I took a Jewish history course. And I learned a lot that's very relevant to me, and how I think of myself as a Jew. And I also want to take a course of at least the history of Mexico, if not just Latin America in general, because I do want to know where I fit in and where my family fits in that history. So I do want to learn the history of Latin America and specifically Mexico, just to
Well, it's important.
Yeah.
That's part of decolonizing.
You should just.
And go finish.
Oh, I was gonna say that for me, it's never. I never when I talk about my roots, I don't necessarily feel like I've lost anything. I've always been very aware that I am a Hispanic Latinx person, because I am visibly other. I am the visible other. So that's never been an issue. I had to claim that identity, because I couldn't claim any other identity. And so for me, decolonizing myself looks like thinking about all the internalized racism that I have, and how I can connect to Black roots when I don't feel I have any Black roots, because of the colonization of Latin America by white people. So right now I'm growing out my hair, and I'm transitioning from perms to natural hair, and that's a way of me connecting with roots that I don't know what they are. So it's like, it's not like I'm connecting with anything because I don't know what it is. It's just like a part of my body and of myself that I've never allowed to like exist. So like,
And I think
that's what it is.
I think that you don't have to have a term for what
Exactly.
you connect back to. Just like you don't have to have a set, like there is no right
Like
Latina.
what
you know
Tamara
what I'm
was saying, like it doesn't, I don't care, like I can care if I choose to in that moment, but like I am whatever I want to be whenever I want to be it.
Yeah.
So like, how do you connect yourself back to you? And I just wanted to say something about what you said, Cami, which is like, we and Graciela were talking about this today, how like we are studying really this because I feel like every day that I spend here, I'm only getting more and more westernized and Americanized. And that is the basis for my project. It's like, I feel like this thing happening and it's almost like we don't have a choice. But it's like,
But it's also like it's okay because that is what it is.
yeah, and that's exactly
Like we're Western.
and I think that that's like another big thing. It's like there's so many fractions among fractions
Yeah.
among fractions of like being a Latinx person in 2016.